Welcome, my friends, to the Zenpreneur podcast. This is your host, Mario Lanzarotti, and today we are going to explore with my friend Joe van Niekerk. We're going to take an exploration into the world of financial freedom, of creating your very dream life. And this man has an intriguing story that I'm really excited to share with you today. He's an ex-professional rugby player. He's played for 13 years. He's played in countries like South Africa and France. And he went through a very deep and profound spiritual transformation that spanned from the jungles of the Amazon to many countries all over the world. And today he founded Rama Organica, which is in the beautiful Costa Rica, a healing sanctuary. And on top of that, Joe went from being a rugby player to being a transformational coach who guides others on a healing journey to awaken and transform their lives. I'm excited to welcome you, my brother. Joe, thank you for being here today.
Oh, Mario, thank you so much, my brother. I'm such a privilege to be here today. I'm honored and yeah, just looking forward to this conversation with you.
Beautiful. Joe, you have quite the extraordinary story. You have been a professional rugby player. And, I've never played rugby, but I'm familiar with rugby. And it's one of those very brutal sports where you are in full body contact, where, ribs get broken, eyes swell up, and all kinds of other things happen. And now you're on the path of healing and transformation. So, can you share with us a little bit about your story, how this all started, and then why you made that decision to move away from rugby into doing what you're doing today?
Sure, Mario. Yeah, as you said before, I played rugby for 13 years professionally, and I played in South Africa for many years, and then I moved over to France. And I think that I initially, at about the age of 27, I had a moment where everything in my life was falling apart. Um, I think that the years before that, I had been given everything on a silver platter. And so, what happened up until that point is I got a very bad injury, a slip disc in my back, and I was out of the 2007 World Cup. So for the viewers out there, that was the Rugby World Cup in 2007. So I missed that because of the slip disc in my back. But
Mhm.
at that moment, I began to drink really, really heavily, and yeah, not really being able to deal with the emotion of not being at the 2007 World Cup. At that moment, my girlfriend was also leaving me because of these behaviors that I had kind of slipped into. And then also my contractual
Yeah.
agreements with South African Rugby and with my province had come to an end. And I had recently looked at signing a contract overseas for an English based club, and that had also fallen down. So, overall, all of these things were happening to me. My world was falling apart for the very first time at 27 years old. And that was the moment where I looked at myself and said, wait, I can't be pointing fingers anymore. I can't be looking outside of myself and
Mm.
saying it's everyone else's fault. I've got to look within and how can I transcend the situation that I'm in? Because at that moment, it felt like the world was ending. And so what I did is I decided I'm going to go back to basics. I stopped drinking. I stopped my going out. I started to reflect upon what I was putting in my body, how I was training, how much sleep I was getting, and then I got a lifeline. And one of my old coaches, he said, "Come back to Johannesburg. We'll get you fit, fighting fit, and we'll get you back onto the field the best you can possibly be." And yeah, from there, the rest was history. And then 6 years on later in Toulon, I came to the last 6 months of my career in Toulon, and I'd been kind of an integral part of the team, captain of the team, and yeah, I worked with this team, and we actually ended up winning silverware. We won the European champions of Europe. So
Amazing.
I'd worked with this team, and then what happened is a new coach came in, And when this coach came in, he was kind of more in favor of some other guys and not in favor of me. So the last 6 months of my career, I was literally like, I went from a replacement to up in the stands. And so for those last 6 months, it was really, really hard for me. And I say it was hard for me, it was hard for my ego, right? Because I'd always been
Mm.
used to being in these teams. And now all of a sudden, boom, I'm out. And so that was the second time that I had something like this happen to me in this life. And I realized once again, I can't be pointing outside fingers at anyone else. This is my journey, and I have to look within to find those answers. So that shift in mindset really helped me, because what it actually did is it transformed a situation that potentially could be really difficult for someone to handle. It transformed it in a positive way. And subsequently, what actually happened was, so I was outside of the team. What I decided after a few days of like kind of grieving the situation and a lot of pain, I decided, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrive at training. I'm going to be as positive as I can be. I'm going to show up with the bags. I'm going to hold those bags as best as I could, and for my teammates. And I'm going to put the same amount of energy or even more energy than I did when I was captain. And I'm going to make it a point to go to the coach every single morning and greet him and say, bonjour, bonjour, coach. Comment ça va? How are you, coach? I hope you're well, and give him a big smile. And so I continued to do that for the last 6 months. And it was crazy because that whole situation, which could have been deemed as, I could have been the victim of that situation, right? I could have been like other players before me. Oh, the coach, it's his fault. He's a dick, or it was him that didn't select me. It was his problem. So just flipping that narrative and kind of creating a situation of like, I can be the victor of this situation, and getting to that point towards the end where Toulon ended up winning everything. They won the domestic competition in France and they won the European Cup again. And I'll never forget it. We went out that night. It was a big celebratory evening with the team. And I was on the dance floor and I'm dancing. And this coach, who was Bernard Laporte, so he was the minister of France back then. He was a really high up politician, and then also in coaching, he had like won a lot of competitions within the French league, and now he's actually part of the French Federation presidents. He came up to me on the dance floor and he said, "Joe," and he said, I'll give you any favor you want. Any favor you want, you can have it." And so it just showed to me how one can really flip the narrative in your story, right? And not become the victim of situations, but rather the victor in these situations. And it was just basically a shift in mindset and also in the perception, right? So yeah, so that was just one story that I wanted to share with you around yeah, flipping the narrative.
That's amazing. And, kudos to you because here you are at this peak of your performance career as a rugby player, and now you're sort of being, many people would view it as like this opportunity is being taken away from you, right? You're being demoted, and it's not really your fault, but it's happening. And I would think the majority of people would look at that and be like, why is this happening to me? This is unfair, and sort of take on that victim mentality. And you didn't do it. You said, no, I want to be the winner of my circumstances, and my current circumstances look the way that they look. I may not agree with them or may not even like them, but I choose to be the victor in any circumstance. And I think that's just a testimony of how important mindset is. And I'm curious, as that happened, what did this kind of mindset then open up for you in your life going forward?
Oh, it was absolutely huge, because I think also the willingness to research, so I also, when that actually happened to me at first, it was like a big shock, right? Because it was like,
Yeah.
as you say, it was like you're at the peak of your career and then it gets taken away from you. So in that moment, it's almost like a bit of a death, and so what I went through was just to research, to go and look, like, how do Buddhists approach life when there's adversity? How do, in spirituality, how do these high spiritual beings, how do they approach these situations when so-called adversity hits them, right? And then also put this whole spin into perspective. It was like, oh wait, your situation is not that bad. There are people around the world who don't have food to eat, and it just, from the perspective of the Chinese and the Buddhists, and what the Chinese did to the Buddhists, and all of those stories of people dying, slaying, massacres and things like this. It really put my story into perspective. And so that was also one of the things that I think that when that actually happened, that I went more into and I researched. And so, yeah, it's just the matter of, exactly as you say, it's becoming that victor in your life, right? It's looking at any form of adversity as a kind of a stepping stone to grow, a stepping stone to
Mm.
kind of step into your power, actually, because we receive things like that on a daily basis, and it could happen in our lives that we have this kind of adversity that, even things that can be considered even, deeper than that, like, or things that, when we lose loved ones, or there's things in our lives, we lose a job, or we become, whatever struggles that we got come up against. Those things are there for our growth, and it's just a matter of, as you said, the mindset shift, right? It's like a mindset shift of going, wait a minute here, how can this situation be for me, as opposed to something that's just, happening to me, and now my life is a mess, and now I'm in trouble, and now I can't stand up. It's more like, no, how can I shift this, change this, so that it can be in favor of the whole, or favor of myself in that process.
Yeah. You point out an integral part of what I call the unstoppable mindset. And if you look at one of the worst things for any high performer, it is that feeling of being stuck, of not knowing, or how to move forward, or not even wanting to move forward for whatever reason. And I find, part of this unstoppable mindset is exactly what you just described so beautifully, where, call it the divine perspective, where something in your life happens, like you can't perform at the way that you have been performing. So now, sort of like, something is being taken away from you. You could say, oh, this is bad, this is stupid, I don't like this, whatever, and then you get angry and you harbor resentment and you stay stuck where you are. Or you could do exactly what you did, and it's like, how might this actually be supporting me to grow towards becoming the man or woman that I need to be, or that I want to be. And so you can never be stopped through that perspective. And some people have this idea, it's like, yeah, oh, I get it, but that's kind of cheating, like, no, it is that way, and that's unfair, and look, all my environment is telling me it's unfair, so my external world, it is trying to confirm to me that I should feel like a victim here. And I love that perspective that you brought forward. And I'm curious. So, you went through the rugby career. I want to understand, how did you go from rugby to transformative healing? Because that's a very, very unique story.
Mario, that's what I wanted to, just to finish off on that last point, because what actually
Yeah.
happened, just for your viewers, right, is that this Bernard Laporte, so he asked me on the dance floor, he said, whatever favor you need, you got it. So what happened subsequently, 6 months later, I'm applying for a French passport. And all of my papers in South Africa have been put on hold, and it's taking 1 year for me to receive all the papers from South Africa
Mm.
to France. And in this process, I've gone over the limited amount of time that I have to receive my passport and to give my papers. So
Yeah.
what happens is I call Bernard Laporte and I say, Bernard, can you help me with this situation in terms of my passport? Boom, one call, bang, next day I've got my passport. So, so, so
Oh,
I'm just like, that puts the whole story into perspective, right? It's like, well, stay positive, keep the right mindset, put things
yeah,
into perspective. Don't become
yeah,
the victim of your situation, you know?
yeah. And also what you're doing there is you really leverage your network. And I love the humility because, a man in your position at the time that you were playing in sort of captain, now you're being demoted from captain, you still have the humility to show up every day to the coach and say, "Good morning, wish you a good day, how are you?" Whereas I could imagine that a lot of people in these positions get entitled, like, "How dare you demote me?" This is who I am, I'm this man, and then they allow their ego, their pride to stop them. And you're like, no, 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 no. I'm still going to continue being Joe because of who I am and who I choose to be. And the results happen. When you need somebody to help you out, boom, you got this guy who's high up in French politics who just helped you with something that could have potentially, put you back a couple of years in terms of progress because you might have had to leave France.
Exactly, exactly. No, that's the thing. That's why I think I love that story so much because it just shows that with that kind of mindset and rocking up in that way. And I feel like exactly as you said, because I potentially had more experience. And I think that what I always noticed within playing within teams is that when the guys weren't selected, there were kind of like a select few that stayed positive, that kept training harder, that went back and went back to the drawing board and they looked where they could make improvements and they kind of kept going at it and with the kind of this inner resilience and stuff. And I saw that, and then I saw the other side of that, and that was, oh, the coach doesn't know what he's doing. I'm so much better than those other players, and they create pockets of negativity within that space. So yes, there's two very different ways of kind of responding to that situation, and I felt that that was a perfect example of just how if we show up in the way that we always showed up before with positivity, optimism, and giving your all to your brothers, to your team, as well as meeting your coach in that way and saying to him, "Hi, coach, I'm here. No matter what happens, I'm here." And as much as that potentially can hurt inside, you got to fake it till you make it, baby. You know what I mean? Just go, because even the way of like saying, I'm gonna rock up, and I'm gonna, even if I'm gonna rock up, and this is hard for me to do, I'm gonna do it because I know that at the end of this, things are gonna turn and things are gonna change, and
Yeah.
luckily in the end, that's God willing, that's exactly what transpired.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And to me, this is a testimony of that who you are being is way more important than what you are doing because from the being originates your doing. And, you stay true to who you are and to what you believe is right and the way to treat other people is right. And so I love that. And yeah, I would love to know now how, from there, the French days, what happened next? How did we get into the healing space?
Oh, so brother, yeah. So the thing is, I know that you've heard of the dark night of the soul, right? And
Hmm.
that literally when you're doing something over and over and over and you expect a different result and that result isn't coming, right? It's insanity because you're not aligned with what your true calling is. And that started to happen to me towards the end of my career. I went through kind of these ups and downs towards the end. And I really felt that what I was still in, was just not in alignment with where I was in my heart and what I was feeling was my kind of soul's purpose.
Yeah.
And and so towards the end, I literally got to that last night, that last party, and the very next day I woke up with inflammation in my body, but just everywhere. And I just decided in that moment I'm done with the chemical, you know, chemical things of putting chemicals
Yeah.
and substances into my body.
Yeah.
I made that decision in that moment, and I just said that that is it. I want to live an organic life. I want to go as much green as I can, and I want to just do a 360-degree kind of shift, from
Mm.
where I was. And I feel like I think because I had prolonged that for so long within my career that at that point I'd reached that point of unbearable suffering, and the reflection of the inflammation in my body was partly related to my emotional state at that point in time. And obviously we know that like um, that emotionally I was also just feeling like I was not aligned with my where I needed to be. And so
Yeah.
I think about 2 days after that, I just went straight onto a 21-day juice fast, and I went deep into it. And I remember I had an epiphanious moment on about the 11th day when I realized, oh my word, I've never felt this healthy in my life. And with minus all the stimulants, all the drugs, all the inflammatory medication, all the foods that weren't complementary to great health, all of those things, right? Without any of them, and just this cleansed, detoxed being, I felt so good. And it was like a light bulb went off in my mind, and it just reminded me, like, this is true health, right? Like, you need to go more towards the organic lifestyle and drop these anti-inflammatory drugs and all of the substances and all of those things, and really go in a natural way. And so that was essentially the first part of me having this kind of slivers of an awakening or illumination around my health and how
Mm.
I'd been feeling for so many years. It's almost as if you get into this numbing. You're numbing yourself. You're distracting yourself from the feeling, and your emotions. And so I reached that point, and as I say, just like a light bulb went off. And thereafter, brother, I just continued to go forward within the spiritual path. And, I booked myself into a Vipassana retreat, 10-day silent retreat. And that was also another epiphanious moment that happened for me there. I didn't realize how out of control my mind was. And I literally, when I sat down in that meditation hall, my judging mind was just throwing out things. Look at the teacher. Oh, what is this meditation? Oh, who are these people? Oh, why is she lying down? Blah 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 blah. And this monkey mind was like a Gatling gun, right? Going, 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 going. And I was just sitting there, and on about the fourth day of meditation, I I was sitting in the hall. I'll never forget it. The sun was setting, so it was like in the afternoon, about 5:30. This is after about 40 hours of meditation. And I'm sitting there and I'm scanning my body. I'm doing the
Wow.
Vipassana meditation, and I'm scanning, scanning, scanning. And all of a sudden, my mind is just, he's given up. He's not judging anymore. And in that moment I had that, like, also realization that, wow, okay, he can actually quiet down, and and so the rest of that retreat was an absolute pleasure because my mind was in the place that it needed to be, as the servant and not as the master. And
Yeah.
so that was also a realization for me, just the silence and how powerful the silence is.
Yeah. You touch on something that I see a lot of people struggle with. And I myself have had lots of experience with that struggle, and that is there is this sense of fear of silence, right? The sense of fear of being with our self. Like, what does that even mean to be with yourself? And you describe it
Mm.
in two ways. One is first you go through this juice cleanse. A lot of people I find shy away from ideas like that is because they think they cannot handle it. Like, what comes up when you're feeling hungry? Will you feel hungry? Are you gonna have headaches? Like, I did a 5 day water fast once, and in the
Mm,
beginning, I was terrified. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be just sitting in my lying in my bed with like cramps and headaches, and I'm gonna be giving up, and then I'm gonna be embarrassed about the fact that I gave up. But as I went through that, I didn't encounter any of that. I encountered a little bit of it. Just like a little bit of a headache, a little bit of like a hunger feeling on the second day. But after that, it was boom. My performance level increased. I was so focused. I felt so alive, so energetic. I had so much energy, and I felt such a deep sense of peace. And then, as you described the vipassana, which I haven't done yet, it's definitely on my list of things that I want to approach. It's like there's this moment that you encounter, and we can talk about plant medicine as well, because I know that you're very prominent in that space. Is is that place that you approach. There's this one point that you approach where all of this stuff just comes up, where your mind gets louder, your body starts to feel uncomfortable in ways that you cannot foresee. And as you break through that, it's like,
mm,
it's this silence. It's this feeling of everything is exactly the way it's supposed to. And that gives you that sense of relief, that sense of joy that comes naturally without you having to do something. And a lot of us, we get joy from our actions. This, what you're describing, I hear, is more of a joy that comes out of your essence, which in that
mm,
way makes it unexhaustible. Like, you can only do so much until you get tired. But that seems to be a source that you tap into that is just it's just more, 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 right? Is that abundance. And yeah, I'm curious, when you took that, you did the juice fast, you did the vipassana, and at what point did the psychedelic realm invite you and say, hello, come and join me?
Well, I just wanted to just say that
Mhm.
you put that so eloquently, and it was just so beautiful. I felt like all the goosebumps on my body because that's the truth, right? That's the truth of our being, is that this fragrance that exudes from our being is joy. And that's the thing that I think that we've missed the boat with, right? Because we always got so many distractions. We're always doing, doing, doing. And as you say, this is the everlasting, that's the everlasting well of youth. That's the
Yeah.
everlasting well of peace and of joy. And it's just a matter of recognition, right? So I just wanted to say it was so beautiful as you
Mm.
expressed that because I just felt it within my whole being, and you can't deny it. It's just it's here, it's with us, and that's such a beautiful way to express it. So thank you. I yes, I then I had been practicing for about 2 years. Just I'd been in solitude, and I'd literally pulled back from everything. I cut myself from the social networks. I wasn't really engaging with a lot of people at that time. I lost a lot of weight. I think I lost 15, 20 kgs in that time. And then I'd basically
Wow.
been following a yogic practice. So I'd been, waking up at 4:30, going for a cold bath, then doing my mantras, then doing my meditation, then going down to the beach, doing sun gazing, and then chanting Bhagavan Das chants. And I kind of got myself into this process as we do as good athletes, we go, we go we get into a routine and a process. And,
Mhm.
subsequently, I learned a lot of lessons about that, that spirituality is not about being the best meditator, right? But I took some of
Mm.
that ego that I had for my rugby and I put it straight into my spiritual path. And coming full
Yeah.
circle around now, I realized, no, man, it's not about it's not about how many hours you can meditate or being good at meditation. It's not about that, right? Or being the
Yeah.
best vegan. So,
Mm.
so yeah, brother. So after about those 2 years, I had started to do some exploration, and I came across a YouTube video. This guy, his name was Jan Koerman, And he was a Dutch guy that went to the Amazon jungle, and he basically traveled down the jungle on the river, and he met some shaman that were from the Amazonias, and he sat with ayahuasca. uh, I think he did 2 sessions with them in the jungle, and he basically filmed this documentary. And I remember seeing this on YouTube and just being like so intrigued and so invigorated by it, and just being like, "What is this? This is so mysterious. I wonder what this is." But there was
Mm.
like, they say with the medicine, if you get called 3 times, you get 3 messages. You got to go. So I
Mm.
was literally like, I had been having these messages along the way, and I just felt this pull, this call, like you've got to go and sit with this medicine.
Yeah.
And so I actually found a beautiful Peruvian shaman in Costa Rica who was serving medicine there, and we connected with her, and she said, "Yes, please come, and you can sit in a 7-day retreat with us, and basically sitting with the medicine 3 times in a week." So
Wow.
actually, I arrived there not knowing anything, and she looked over at me first glance, and she said, "You got to keep the medicine in you." And so I thought to myself, what does she mean by keep the medicine in you? And later on, I discovered that what she was actually saying is that because she could see within my energetic field, she could see that there was, even though I'd been doing the work, like I still had a lot of stagnation, and I had
Mm.
energies that weren't mine, that were on my body, and that there were things within me that needed to be resolved. And so she basically said, keep the medicine in you, don't go and purge.
Mm.
So for the first 2 sittings with the medicine, I literally, as you would know, because you've also explored this realm a lot, is that I was flung into this mysterious world where I was not even sure that I could describe the things that I was seeing afterwards, right? And just so many things happened within those first 2 nights. And it was a mix of nausea and of bliss. So it would be nausea, then it would be bliss. Then I would see visions, then it would be nausea, then it would be bliss, then I'd see visions. And that happened for basically the first 2 nights. And then on the third night, so I didn't purge, I've been obviously going to the toilet and that, but I didn't purge. And so on the third night, I'm sitting there, I drank the medicine, and wow, it was hard to put down, right? Because it was like thick Peruvian like medicine. I was really tough
Nah.
for me to drink. And and it was like a, the
I
little
can
the
taste
little
it right
granule.
now. Ah.
You can't get that taste out, bro. It stays.
um,
And so, yeah, so that third night, I drank the medicine, and I had this beautiful brother next to me, an American guy. His name was Jay, and he goes, "Get it out, brother, get it out." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go for the most." Literally like the most massive purge of my life. I get up, and I can hardly walk at this moment, and I'm like, what, like stumbling towards the door. And I get to the door, and I look outside, and there's this fire, right? And I'm just like, okay, I gotta get out here now. And I go and I pull myself out. And brother, honestly, I'm not kidding you. That was it was like 14, 15 years of carnage. It was just like, like like literally projectile, like, and and I'm literally like, I'm purging, I'm purging, and it doesn't stop, eh? And I get down on my knees, and I'm literally like purging, purging, and then the sense of like forgiveness comes over me and just says, just forgive yourself, just forgive yourself, forgive others for what they have done, forgive yourself for what you have done. And
mm,
the end of the purging came about, and in that moment, I just started bawling my eyes out, started crying, and just
mm,
this like sense of like overwhelming gratitude came over me, and just
yeah.
said, like, how could I have got to this point? Because all of those things, all of the trials, all of the tribulations, everything that I'd been to up until that point, how did I manage to get to this point to be blessed enough to be able to let go of everything I'd been carrying and to forgive myself for the very first time in this lifetime and to forgive others. And I'll never forget it. The little guy that was a facilitator, he came over onto my shoulder and I was weeping on the floor and just crying and just thanking God for being there in that moment. And he just came over and he said, "You are the light, my brother. You are the light." And I literally, after that, I looked up, brother. I looked up and I saw the universe in a totally different way. It was like I was seeing stars shooting. I was like really feeling connected to the cosmos and just to nature, everything around me. And in that moment, I began to pray and just say, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I apologize. I'm sorry. I forgive myself." I send out all these prayers to everyone I've ever hurt, or it's relationships that I did wrong, or things that I hadn't been, it hadn't held integrity, and just send out those things, send it out to all those beings and to myself, and it was just, yeah, it was just such a beautiful moment of realization and of blessings and of gratitude just to have got to that point in my life.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So for those of you tuning in right now, you may have not experienced an ayahuasca ceremony, and what Joe refers to as purging is known as the process of vomiting, right? And what you find in these ceremonies, while to some of you this may seem like, what? Oh my God, you're vomiting? This is terrible. I don't want to do that, right? Because you might be thinking alcohol, vomiting is sort of like detox, getting the toxins out. In the ayahuasca, you also get toxins out of you, like the actual physical components of it that come through the way your lifestyle. But what you also notice, and I'm sure you've noticed that as well, Joe, is like you go in with little to no food in your stomach. And you sit and you start purging, and all of a sudden there's a lot of things, and I want to get into too graphic, but there's a lot that comes out of you, and you can only ask yourself, where's this coming from if this isn't food? And it's an incredibly cleansing process. So what you were sharing, Joe, is how, in that moment when you are really brought down to your knees and when you become so vulnerable that you let your ego fall completely, you are then met with an opportunity to really deeply connect to this essence that people call the universe, God, spirit, source, life, in a way that it cleanses you and it frees you from the things that you've been holding on to. And I love the way that you're describing that with that prayer and that I think it's the hopo, I'm going to say it wrong, hopo'onopono,
Yes,
right? The
Ho'oponopono.
one you said, that one, right? So I'm curious, as you bring together juicing, yoga, lifestyle, silent retreats, plant medicine, and one of the things that I always like to do is how do you integrate that into your day-to-day life? Because it's one thing to live this very aligned lifestyle when you're out in the jungle, when you're in the mountains, you're surrounded by people that are doing the same things. But the moment you come back into this reality, of a city, of a larger country, where of all these moving parts and all these people that are not on that same wavelength yet. So I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you integrate that into your day-to-day life, and what kind of tools do you use for that?
Yeah, so this is very interesting, Mario, because also I forgot to mention around the trauma. So I've been carrying this trauma. I lost my father when I was 14 years old,
Mm.
and it was basically from day to
Wow.
day. Like he was there the one day, the next day he was gone. So it was like it was my very first experience of impermanence in this life, and how the impermanent nature of the universe, right? As one of the fundamental laws of the universe, impermanence. And so I hadn't completely dealt with that trauma because, that night he kissed me on the lips and he said, "I love you so much." And the next morning when I woke up, the house was completely empty and there was no one there. And I wondered to myself, where is everyone? Where's my dad? Where's my stepmother? Where are they? And my stepmother, subsequently, she arrived about an hour later, and she gave me the news that my father had died that night in an accident. And when that happened, it was like this wrenching pain in my heart. And I just, and as a 14-year-old boy, I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to deal with that pain. And I remember just running around the house and saying, "It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true." And having this
Mm,
overbearing sense that what how can this be, and not understanding.
mm,
And so what that showed me in the ayahuasca was that for 20 years of my life, I'd been carrying this trauma and I'd been acting out. My behaviors had been related to the trauma and that I had been acting out. And I
wow.
subsequently also saw that my behaviors from that point on, that I had this rebellious kind of energy towards any authority that would want to tell me what to do. I'd rebel against it, and it would be to the point where I would actually sometimes hurt myself because I would get into this mindset of being like, oh, no one can hurt me the way that I was hurt, through losing my dad. And so just these kind of patterns that I hadn't identified, and I think also related to drinking, the addiction that came with drinking, numbing your emotions and not really being able to handle or deal with your emotions. And so
Yeah.
that was also kind of an epiphanious moment for me at when I did the retreat with ayahuasca, because it actually showed me that I'd been carrying this trauma and I hadn't also been able to dislodge it from my body. And through the purging and through the release, I was able to release a lot of that pain that I'd been
Mm,
carrying around with me for a very long time. And
yeah.
so yeah, so to get to your question, for me, really, it's around how self-aware are we, right? How self-aware are we about that things from our past could be impeding our actually the future that we want to create, or the endless possibilities that exist if I've got something that I'm holding on to, or that I've been hurt by someone else, or I've been rejected, or I've been, obviously from a childhood perspective, like all forms of trauma happen to us when we're very young. So those
Yeah.
things could be playing out in our adult life, and we may not even be aware of it. So I would say that the big thing for people these days is to become more self-aware. So how do we become more self-aware? Well, if we don't have any space and we haven't created the space within inside ourselves to actually, you mentioned it before, but how are we capable of sitting by ourselves alone? It's a profound question to ask, because that's a lot of times when we actually see, and we become aware of the patterns of our mind, or the tendencies that we have, or the behaviors, how we've been acting out. And
Mm,
we don't necessarily touch on that if we're doing, and we're not giving ourselves the time to actually just be. And so
yeah.
yeah, I would say that is more around the discovery of looking and checking into how are we interacting with other beings? How are we,
Mm,
approaching life? How are we waking up every morning? Are we feeling like we want to take on the world and we're excited to get up every morning? Or are we getting out of bed, rolling out of bed and just plonking to the next thing and just doing things and keeping ourselves distracted? So yeah, so I feel like definitely self-awareness is a big key in this process, and not so much so at becoming the best meditator, but more so about calming our minds, just
yeah.
calming our minds, and then also becoming aware of the mechanism of mind and how it works, and then also just allowing ourselves to be in our hearts.
Yeah. Uh, I love this. And it's part of my daily practice as well, is cultivating awareness. And I think you give the perfect example of somebody that has experienced a great deal of trauma in his childhood and also later in your career, quite frankly. There's like daily trauma by the way that you are, hitting your body. And that's also part of it. And I think there are two steps that you've outlined here very beautifully. One is there is going through the, let's call them the bigger processes, the experiences such as ayahuasca, in this example, where you allowed a lot of this pain to even surface and to come up. And I feel that a lot of people are not going there because they don't know how to. They don't feel safe. They don't have the resources and the access. And I'm happy to see that plant medicine, for instance, is becoming more readily available. Also, being aware of the people that are doing this from a place of respect, of honor, and integrity as part of the native cultures, and are not just bastardizing that. Um, but I think once you do that, once you allow the bigger pain and trauma to surface and to be expressed, then it moves into the day-to-day practice that you've outlined of cultivating awareness. And you spoke to, I think, one of the biggest challenges, especially for people like you and I, because we are business leaders. And if you look at the nature of a business, the nature of a business is about doing, right? You have to take action in order for those actions to result in consistent results. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they get locked in into this constant doing space all the time, doing, 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 doing. There comes the hustle mentality of just do more, work harder, play bigger, all of that stuff. And so, from your perspective as a business leader, how do you find, or how can we all find the balance between the doing and the being while still honoring this bigger vision that we want to create?
Such a beautiful question, Mario. I think that what you mentioned earlier is one of the keys, brother, is that we have this everlasting joy that is within us, and that this joy and this peace that is within us is actually the fountain of youth. It's actually giving us that peace of mind. It's giving us that time to really just be with ourselves, right? And with that, that gives us this so much creativity. It gives us so much ability to then go after the things we want to go after, right? And so it's exactly as you say. It's not saying, okay, no, now I'm just going to sit on my ass, because I think a lot of people think that, the being, what is being, what is it? But if you don't have the recognition of it, then
Yeah,
how can you ever know? And that's the
yeah,
thing. I think then we get caught in the cycle of just doing, as you say, we're running from this thing to that thing. And I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand, witness that when we are capable of just being with ourselves, uh, we are actually allowing more energy for us to actually go after the things that we want in this life. And I think that that's a crucial part of this, is about helping entrepreneurs develop this other side of what they are, right? Because a lot of times, like, they're not even having afforded the opportunity, or giving themselves, because they are so driven. But we both know, where does that lead to? That leads to exhaustion, that leads to burnout. And I know that there are many, many, many businessmen, entrepreneurs that are going through that process in their lives. And so I would say that,
yeah,
be with someone, have a guide, support in those processes, for people to be able to, as highly driven people, to be able to also have that checkout, where they can check out and they can be just in nature, or they can be with themselves, or they can, follow a meditation technique, or they can, even, breath techniques are also amazing for this kind of work. And so it's almost just allowing for the crazy monkey mind to just switch off for a little bit, and
yeah,
and then, yeah, just allow for this presence to just exude and permeate everything, right? But it's, as well as I do, it's not as easy as just turning a switch, because we have to go through these processes, and we have to kind of shed a lot of what we've been carrying for lifetimes to get to that point of that recognition, right? So it is a
Yeah.
process for sure.
You just spoke into how to facilitate being. And the challenge that I see is exactly what you point out is when you're so caught up in the doing, you will not make space for being. Plus, often you don't even know how to do that. So I think what you brought
Mm.
in about having somebody to guide you, like a coach, like a mentor, like an advisor, to provide that space for you is so extremely valuable because only then can you actually slow down and see what is holding me back in my life? What is stopping me from getting to the next level in my business, in my relationship, in my health, in my spirituality? There's usually always a way that we are preventing ourselves from doing that. And it's created through the obsessiveness of doing, of holding on to one path, of thinking, well, I used to do it this way, it worked yesterday, so now it has to work that same way again. But then we deny the biggest part of ourselves, which is that way of being. And speaking about coaching, what is it that you feel and have seen helps people create that life of abundance where they can access financial freedom and really live the life that they want to live the most?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to the balance, right? And then also, I like to work with other human beings in the way of allowing them to experientially sense what they are. So, for instance, you talked about the joy, the peace, the love, the compassion, the wisdom. Those are all what we spoke about earlier, but the essences of what we are, right? Of our true nature. So it's about helping other beings, guiding them to that point where they can have their own recognition, where they can recognize what their being is. And when that happens, they are actually can have these awakenings in that process. And it's just a matter of guiding in a specific way so that they recognize, wait, this is what I am. And that recognition is so powerful. It's the highest in the human kingdom, right? But I think because of our lifestyles and the way that things are set up at the moment, we're just going, 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 doing, doing, doing. So my kind of what I would share as advice would say that we gotta like unwind, we gotta get that monkey mind and calm him down, and through those processes we gotta help the human being recognize what they are. And then through that process, this will open up a whole world of infinite possibility and abundance. Because it's almost like imagine like all of your conditioning, your past, where you've been, what you've done, who you think you are, all of the things within the egoic mind, all of it. Okay, from even our projections into the future, the past, the present, our concepts, beliefs, ideas, all of it. So now, if we can take you to that point of just being, right? Minus all of this. You can leave all of this outside and you can join into this room of being. And in this room of being, it's just us. And it's minus family, it's minus the conditioning, who we think we are, all of those things. And that recognition in itself is so, so powerful. It's because the people can see exactly in that moment who they are. And that recognition is not something for your mind. Your mind cannot. How can the mind explain the universe and all the different dimensions and what we are, right? It never has, never will. So why not experientially sense and have that experience in real life to then open up your world to infinite possibility and abundance?
Yeah. There's a there's a difference between reading a book and experiencing a book. or you could say reading, consuming knowledge and experiencing knowledge. And I think that's what you're describing. It's like you get to experience what it's like, first of all, to be who you are being, and to be a new possibility of who you might be if you choose to. And I think it
Mm.
drops into the fabric of who we are, into our DNA, and it's a different kind of understanding. It's not, I feel it's a no longer like a belief, but it's a deep knowing. It's like people often ask this question: if you could go back in time and do something different, and tell your younger self, don't do this, don't do that, I would always tell them, okay, invest in Bitcoin. But then again, if I hadn't experienced all of the pitfalls, all of the dark nights of the souls, all of the extreme highs and all of that, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I really like who I am today. So I'm glad that I went through all of these things and came out the other way. And that is that nature of experiencing. And I think there's a lot of people that can really benefit from that philosophy that you brought forward, where it's like, be with it, experience it, um, learn to experience your own body and where the pain comes
Mm.
up. And then when you sit with yourself, and you have all these thoughts, and then you recognize, it's not because of my environment, because of the people, no, it's because of what I have stored from the past. So thank you for so beautifully putting that out there. And as we get to the end of our conversation, Joe, I would love for you to share. You told me in the beginning of our conversation that you have something to share with our listeners and viewers, and I would love for you to speak into that now.
Okay, sure, Mario. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that I just wanted to share a jungle breath stress technique, right? Stress
Hmm.
release technique. So basically, what it is, it's a very simple uh, way. If you're feeling like really anxious in any moment in your day, you're feeling overburdened, just take out 3 minutes to sit in a comfortable position with your back, neck, and spine straight. You can sit like this, and for the viewers out there, that's basically what it is. It's just to really drop into this calm state and being. So what you do is you breathe in through your nose until the top of that breath, and then you're going to breathe 3 more inhales. So hold it for 3 seconds and out through the mouth. And at the bottom of that exhale, 3 more breaths out. Hold for 3 seconds, in through the nose. At the top of that breath, 3 more in breaths. Hold for 3 seconds, out through the mouth. 3 more out breaths. 3 seconds, in through the nose. 3 more in breaths. Hold for 3 seconds, out through the mouth.
Whew. Wow. Ah, I feel great. Ah, thank you. Thank you for guiding us. What a fast way to just tune in, center yourself, and for anyone listening, imagine what your day would look like if you scheduled in 5 to 10 of these that just take you a minute or two. You would have so much focus, so much presence, so much quality in your thinking and in your acting, so much intention to how you're living your day and how you're approaching each and every moment. So I think this is amazing, Joe. So thank you for sharing this. And I also remember that you have a program that people can join if they're interested in working with you and expanding on this path that they're on. Can you speak a little bit into that as well?
Yeah, sure, of course. Thank you, Mario. I yes, I've been actually scheduling one-on-one healing sessions with people, and I'm almost kind of, when I wrote the list of what the people can expect through those sessions, I almost wanted to scrap some of that list because it was, to some degree, I felt that, working with people and building a relationship with them and kind of expanding on just a one-off session, right? Obviously, the first session can just be to feel if we're aligned with each other, but I felt that a longer term program would be much more beneficial. And so I talk about things around integrity, around self-awareness, about deepening your relationships, making stronger bonds with other human beings, and then also within that is self-inquiry meditation, leading you towards what you are. And I think that this in itself can open up so many possibilities in your life. And so I wouldn't say that all of those are um, possible within one session, and that's why I offer a longer 6 week program with people. And yeah, I just love to offer myself in this way, Mario. Um, I feel like part of my path is around selfless service, and obviously through these processes, we're able to create more abundance for ourselves and for others and for our families. And one thing I've also realized is that there is enough for everyone. It's just a matter of
Mm.
recognizing how much abundance we do actually have in our lives. And it's just noticing, right? And so brother, yeah, if anyone wants to get hold of me, they're more than welcome to reach out to me on Jungle Joe 333 on Instagram. And yeah, it would be an absolute honor to serve, and also just to help people recognize, as well as to develop in some way this possibility that we spoke about, this possibility of being, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Joe, my friend, my brother. This was a very powerful conversation. I highly recommend that wherever you are, reach out to Joe, find him on Instagram. I'll be sure to add the links in the show notes so you have it there. Thank you, Joe, for being a steward of this healing conscious shift that we are witnessing in the world. Thank you for being the man that you are. Thank you for going through your transformation and sharing it with the world. And thank you for being a listener on this show, the Zenpreneur podcast. And I'm excited to continue to bring you amazing guests such as Joe. And with that, we are complete for today's episode, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you, everyone.